Welcome into another edition of Long Ball, your weekly stop for Blue Jays news and analysis here at Post Media. I'm Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto Sun Blue Jays writer and columnist Rob Longley. And Rob, what a road trip it was for the Blue Jays, yet again coming away with another successful run, 8-2 through Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Texas as they get ready for a big week ahead here between the Rays and the Orioles, of course. But this past week of baseball, we've seen some great stretches this year from the Blue Jays. Where did this most recent run rank for you this season?
It ranked as show me. I mean, 8-2 on the road against two of the teams were really poor teams. I mean, it's what I would call it is taking care of business. Anything less would have been a disappointment, especially given what's ahead, given the challenges ahead to the remainder of the season. They really had to take advantage of both the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Texas Rangers, and they did that to their credit. In particular, they were strong against Baltimore, but they were able to expose the Orioles a little bit. The Orioles were contenders up until that series, and maybe were exposed as being a little bit more pretenders. But we still need to see more from this team. We still need to see them play well consistently against good teams. We still need them to see depth in the rotation, in the starting rotation. You can't just have a throwaway guy every third or fourth day. And we need to see somebody else in the batting order get hot, like Bo Bichette has been over the last little while, because he literally carried them through that road series in a lot of ways, right? He did have some support, but Bo Bichette was the big bat throughout that 8-2 road trip, and they need Vlad Guerrero Jr. to do a little bit of that as well, and maybe some Teoscar Hernandez on the side, and a little bit of Alejandro Kirk. I mean, because this team, its identity is still its offense. Kudos to the rotation and kudos to the bullpen for being very strong right now. But if this team's going to go anywhere into October, it's going to have to do so with a prolific offense that we've seen from them in the past and that was expected of them going into this season.
Yeah, it's great to have one guy going right now in Bo Bichette, but he does need some help, like you say, and maybe that does come from Vladdy Jr., who, the final game against Texas had a lot of hard-hit balls, and maybe it's starting to come around for him. I think Alejandro Kirk started to have some nicer at-bats as well, but you definitely need more than one or two guys at this point in the season, especially come the playoffs. But the pitching has continued to hold up through this stretch, Rob, really for the last, couple weeks, month or so. The pitching, whether it's the rotation, the bullpen has been strong. There's been some weak spots. Obviously, Mitch White has had his struggles here and there, and, Kevin Gausman got knocked around a little bit in his most recent start. But, we've talked all season long about this 1-2 punch of Kevin Gausman and Alek Manoah. If you're looking at a playoff game right now, a game one, whether it's on the road or at home, if you can set it up, both guys have had phenomenal seasons. Which way would you be leaning right now if you could set it up if you were John Snyder as your game one playoff starter?
Yeah, that's going to be something we're going to be debating a lot over the next few weeks, I think, Rob. And I think if I was going with my heart, I would go with Alek Manoah because, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, he's been the MVP of this team this season. He's gotten stronger as the season's gone along. He's got one of the best ERAs in all of baseball and all of the American League. And there's something about his makeup that screams big game pitcher. We saw it in that game in Baltimore where he had probably his best start of the season. We saw it in the All-Star game when he was a real showman there for his one inning of work. We saw it at Yankee Stadium when he played when he took on Garrett Cole and basically challenged him to a fist fight almost by the end of it. So in a lot of ways, with my heart, I would go with Alek Manoah. But I really wonder if the Jays will lean towards experience and maybe go to Kevin Gausman. Here's a guy who's a veteran who's been around quite a bit. And you're going to use these two guys in games 1 and 2 no matter what. So it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. So why not maybe go with a more established guy in Kevin Gausman, who has been basically right there with Manoah for most of the season. He's had maybe more downturns than Alek has, but Kevin Gausman's a proven big game performer as well. So I think if I were the Jays, or if I were trying to get in the mind of Jays manager John Schneider in the front office and how they're going to approach it, my guess is they would go with Kevin Gausman and then put Alek Manoah in the 2-hole of whatever playoff series they end up playing in.
Well, we'll see what happens when we get there, of course. But this week ahead, Rob, the Rays, like I mentioned, and the Orioles, it could be the defining week of the season for the Blue Jays. A couple of massive series here. What are you expecting for the next 7 days from this Blue Jays team?
I think we're going to see a lot about what their makeup is, right? They've talked bravely heading into this week about how important it is and how it's, and then there's guys in that lineup that are still talking about chasing down the New York Yankees for top spot in the American League East, which may be a bit of a stretch, but I guess you appreciate having that mindset. It's probably the better way to go into it. But I've spent a fair bit of time projecting and going through the remaining schedules of the Blue Jays and the Rays and the Seattle Mariners. And I'm of the mind right now that it's starting to look like you want to book your flight to Seattle for the wild card weekend, because Seattle has a much easier schedule than the other two teams. The Jays, of course, have the Yankees besides these games against the Rays, and another two series against the Orioles, who probably won't go away completely. While the Rays have, besides the 9 that they play against the Blue Jays, they have dates with the Cleveland Guardians and the Houston Astros. So the Seattle Mariners have by far the easiest schedule of these 3 wild card contenders. So the way I would see it playing out would be Seattle taking the 1 seed, Toronto taking the 2 seed, and having to head to Seattle for that 3-game series, and then the Tampa Bay Rays taking the 3rd spot. But you know what it's like, Rob. We're going to be looking at the scoreboard and the standings every night and every morning, because I think it's going to change multiple times over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be a back and forth affair for sure as we head down to the final weeks of this month. As always, you can find Rob's work at the Toronto Sun, and you can find him on Twitter at Longley Sun Sport. That'll do it for this edition of Long Ball.